If you haven't walked the beach, the Gulf Beach on Cayo Costa at dawn, you haven't experienced one of the finest pleasures in Florida. It is truly a remarkable place.
Cayo Costa State Park, Florida's largest and most pristine barrier island, is in danger from mismanagement by the Department of Environmental Protection. For 5 years, the DEP has been allowing thousands of commercial visitors to arrive on 50-foot ferry boats at a tiny south dock. This unchecked human impact is taking a toll on the park's most vulnerable section, at the Narrows along the park's South Beach.
If tourism isn't regulated to some degree, it always tends to compromise some of these special places. We're seeing this all over the state now, and Cayo Costa is such a special resource, and for boats getting across the aquatic preserve to get to Cayo Costa, if there's enough of that traffic, it creates problems with the wildlife, perhaps creates some turbidity issues for seagrass, and of course, once the tour boats get to the island itself, then there's physical damage from just lots of people, entering the island, walking on the island. If it isn't managed, if it isn't regulated, then it becomes out of control.
For-profit commercial vessels traverse Cayo Costa's shallow, unmarked backwaters at all tides several times a day, along a waterway typically used by private boaters. The large ferries endanger manatees that frequent the bayside area. Their twin engines are damaging sensitive seagrass beds, and the landing area shows visible signs of propeller scarring and blowout holes. The boats pass near unprotected Calusa Indian mounds, increasing exposure to this historic archaeological site, where looting has become more evident. The ferries drop off up to 50 people at a time on a tiny dock built in 2016. There are no limits to how many people they can bring. The dock is not appropriate for commercial use, and it sits on land which was purchased with funds earmarked for preservation, not commercial use. Visitors cross over to the beach along a heavily trampled path. The forward growth of the beach sea oat and sand dune defense systems are being destroyed. Private property trespassing and littering are occurring. There are no facilities and no park oversight. This constant human activity has impacted shorebird nesting patterns. The rare snowy plovers that used to nest along the Narrows no longer nest there. The park abandoned their sea turtle protection program here in 2017. Because of a flawed permitting process, the state did no environmental due diligence and received no public input prior to changing it to commercial use.
The island is a special place, and these kind of activities that aren't regulated or management essentially become damaging, kind of death by 1,000 cuts. They're occurring often, and it becomes cumulative through time in terms of the impact of that damage to these aquatic ecosystems.
The Narrows is the island's least resilient section, and only 450 feet wide. It is starved of sand and subject to erosion and storm washover. Heavy daily commercial foot traffic has created a divide across the island. In 2004, Hurricane Charlie directly hit the Narrows, causing a breach at nearby North Captiva. Experts have said a breach at the Narrows is possible and would be catastrophic.
Well, the damage that's occurring to the state park now is obvious, and there's secondary damage apparently to the Pine Island Aquatic Preserve, so there's prop dredging, some littoral zone damage for where they unload the tourists that enter the island from the east side near the Narrows. It's my understanding there's an area a little further north that's better facilitated for this kind of activity, but these commercial tour boats are actually using the Narrows area, which isn't suited for that, and that's what's creating the damage.
Before commercial use at the Narrows, private boaters and paddlers used the bayside access point, but the commercial operators have shut private boaters out, posting signs telling them to stay away from sunup to sundown.
5 years ago, I noticed that there were bars up, everything had changed, and there was a padlock on that dock. And I was a little confused, and there was no explanation, and I called up the ranger at the time and to ask him what was going on, and he said, well, this has never been open to the public, and this is now exclusively for the concessionaire, which I was very surprised.
Yes, let me give you a little bit of background. I'm a civil engineer and happen to also be a general contractor, and I work for a lot of state agencies, and I've also been on the water here for almost 4 decades. And I was pretty surprised about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago to find that the historic Southern Public Dock had been rebuilt completely, and then it turned out privatized. And as I looked into it a little bit further, I found that it had been not really permitted. It had just been permitted as a redeck or an in-kind replacement, but that's not what happened. What happened, they cleared mangroves and drove piling and reconfigured the whole end. The end of that dock had been missing for, I don't know, 15 years, probably the last 40 feet. The rest of it was in bad repair, and we've been using it forever. And it seems pretty incredible that you could build such a structure without a permit at all, and really misrepresenting what you were doing. And then it turns out that it would be a state branch of government that was doing that was even more shocking.
Visitation at the Narrows and South Dock by private boaters, hikers, and paddlers is a better management practice and causes less stress on the park's resources. These passive, dispersed recreational activities are more sustainable for the South Beach.
I literally, 5 years ago, could barely access that point in a shallow draft flats boat that draws 9 inches of water. And now there's a section that's 40 or 50 feet out of the newly rebuilt dock that, like I said, is completely different than the historic configuration, and they've prop dredged it so that at low tide, even large vessels can now access it. And all this has been done with no permit. It's completely bizarre that our state government would allow that to happen.
My boat's a 20-foot boat, and it drafts about 10 inches. Even for me, there are certain tides that I don't want to go in to that area around Paywan Point. I've noticed that since that boat has been going through there, and obviously during winter tides, they're going through there daily, regardless of the tides. I've noticed that the grass flats have been scarred up, and there's a channel that's, from where they've gone back and forth across the grass flat, there seems to be a channel that's developing there, which I think, it's inappropriate to have twin 250s going through an area that averages about 2-foot depth in that whole area.
In 2020, the DEP admitted damage was occurring and vowed to stop the commercial activity, but abruptly decided to let it continue. SAVE CAYO COSTA'S mission is to convince the DEP to reverse its position and stop commercial use at the South Dock. Large groups should land on the north end at the more resilient, mile-wide Pelican Bay Cayo Costa State Park facilities. Here, visitors will have a richer and safer park experience with plenty of amenities and bathrooms. What will Cayo Costa State Park look like in 50 years if unchecked commercial use at the Narrows is allowed to continue?
It is the quintessential pristine barrier island in Florida. It's a magnificent resource. It's inspired photographers like Clyde Butcher that has some of the most iconic images of Florida are from Cayo Costa.
If anyone in the private world were to wish to do what they did, you would absolutely need to go through a permitting process, and at least if you did exactly what they did, it'd be real likely that you'd have administrative fines. Laws and regulations aren't the same thing. They certainly broke regulation in doing what they did.
Cayo Costa is the crown jewel of Lee County. It hurts me. My daughter grew up on the South Dock. Going there all the time. She is now in college at the University of Florida, and it just hurts me that the state is wanting to turn this all over to the concessionaire, to private industry, and to commercialization.
What do you guys think? You like going there, don't you? How many times do you go there a year, do you think, on that nice Cayo Costa beach?
Maybe more than 200 times.
More than 200? Your dad has a job, dude.
Cayo Costa State Park is a jewel among Florida's 175 award-winning state parks. Proper management of this unique, bridgeless barrier island will ensure it remains pristine for future generations. What will we leave our grandchildren? It's up to us to decide. You can make a difference. Join Save Cayo Costa's efforts today.
There were no hearings. There was no public notice. It was all done as a closed-door deal, and that's crazy. That's not how Florida works. That's how some places in some other states might work, but not our state.